welcome to the Awake Space Astrology Podcast. I'm Laurie Rivers with you, here to help you with some inspiration to get those aspirations out into the world. And I don't know what I'm helping you with this week, but I sure like doing it. I love hearing how I help you guys get to work on your commute or go to the grocery store, do the Target run, fold the laundry, wash the dishes, cook the meals, whatever it is you're doing. I'm glad to be on that journey with you. In this episode, I'm talking about this week. This week is kind of interesting. I'm not going to lie, Monday looks like one of the better days this week. We still have that Mars-Pluto opposition, and Mars and Pluto are square Jupiter still in the T-square of boom, and it's been tense. I've had all kinds of tech issues. It's been nuts because of where it's hitting in my chart. Let's see, what else I'm going to talk about? I'm talking about Memorial Day as well. We're going to talk about Memorial Day, or at least the weekend. It's not too bad of a weekend. It's the moon in Leo. The 24th through the 26th is kind of explosive energy, Not only will the moon be conjunct Mars, squaring off with Jupiter and opposing Pluto, like the minute it enters, we could see some big bada booms happening. And I think it'll be a lot of natural events, but, there's other stuff. So there's that. Got some fun stuff happening in this episode as well. We're talking about what's going on in Patreon. Don't skip the Patron Shoutouts, guys. I kept it short this time anyway. Also talking about being a guest on other podcasts. And the first episode that I was a guest on someone else's podcast has dropped. And I'm excited about that. That's super fun. And I talk about that coming up next in the next segment. That's exciting. And I hope y'all go listen to it and support that podcaster. They're absolutely wonderful. And I'll put the information in the show notes. You'll find out more about that, the deets on that in the next segment. And then I answer questions. I answer some astrology questions. We've got quite a few good ones. I've got some complex ones, and you'll hear that in that episode. There's a couple times I'm like, I'm not going to answer that this episode, and I make a promise about doing a patron only episode. And I'll try to get that done this week. That's probably how I'll use the wild energy of the week. I'll do a patron only episode about Pluto. So that's one of the fun things about having a Patreon. I can make special content for the people who support what I do. And one of those things, especially, is this podcast. All right. No need to chit-chatter on too much. Let's grab our coffee and let's start the day with some information about this week, starting May 22nd through the 28th. And like I said, it's a little bit of a roller coaster. We're going to talk about that coming up next. Okay, I can't stand it. I've got to tell you about the podcast I got to be a guest on. Super exciting. It's called Out of the Box with Christine. And Christine is absolutely phenomenal. She is an amazing media professional. She helps people get their podcasts started. She teaches them about how to promote themselves, how to work with media itself, how to grow their audiences and their businesses. And I was utterly honored to be her guest, but more importantly, to get to know her as a person. She was in radio broadcasting in Los Angeles and New York for many, many years before moving to Australia. And she is absolutely one of the coolest people I've gotten to talk to. We kind of have a mutual admiration society going on. Her name is Christine Blosdale, and she is your expert authority coach. giving you and your business the attention they deserve is her tagline. I love her mantra. Do it today, do it today, do it today. And she's not wrong. I got to be her guest talking about astrology and business and gave a few heads up on what I see happening out in the world. We had a wonderful conversation. You can check the show notes for the link, or you can go to Out of the Box with Christine on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and YouTube. And again, I'll put those links in the show notes. Super, super excited to be her guest and to kind of get out there a little bit more. So thank you for listening to that, and check her out. If you have a business, especially, she's got wonderful guests with great expertise. Before I went on the show, I listened. I do that before I go on. I listen to people's podcasts and get a feel for what's going to go on in the show. So I'm a little prepared. And man, I just couldn't stop listening to the episodes. So I'm a subscriber to her now. So you should go check her out. So, all right, what are we doing? Are we folding laundry? Are we washing dishes? Are we sweeping floors? Are we taking the kids to school? I promise I'll watch my potty mouth a little bit. Are we folding the laundry? What are we doing together? Let me know. I love knowing all the different ways I go to places, whether it's the grocery store or I help you at work. It's always fun when you check in with me with that. So here's what you want to know. Next couple of days aren't too bad with the moon in Cancer. There's not a lot of stress going on there. In fact, we might even have a couple of good days. It was the lowest crunch report I've given in quite a few weeks. Okay, it was the lowest crunch report I've given quite a few weeks. And it's giving us a chance to kind of, we will be in the feels. And I know people are going to be like, but I've been so emotional, Laurie. I'm like, yeah, emotional isn't bad. It's been frustrating. We're watching leaders or so-called leaders make really terrible decisions. We're facing climate crisis. There's economic crisis. There's conflicts around the world and conflicts brewing, and things are uncertain. I think it's okay to have a cry over that. Okay. Pardon my Cancerian Sun and Mercury, but I think it's okay to have a moment. I have moments too. I sit there in frustration. My poor mods had to listen to me vent my decades of frustration at leadership in many sectors of the world for allowing the chaos to happen. We could have innovated. We could have innovated many times, but people are holding on to their beliefs and living in cognitive dissonance, and here we are. And yeah, sometimes we're just going to have a little breakdown, and then we have a breakthrough. Okay. So we're kind of in a week where things are fomenting. We've got tensions fomenting. We've got pressure building, and we're all tired. We're all tired. It's okay to be tired. Okay, guys? Are we going to stay tired? No. Like I said, once in a while, we have to have a breakdown to have a breakthrough. And that's kind of the transition week we're in. So when the moon goes into Leo this week, it's going to conjunct, well, first it's going to square off with Jupiter, and it will oppose Pluto. And that will be some kind of big tension that's going to spill over into some kind of action when the moon conjuncts with Mars just, 4 hours later or before. And it could be the volcano in Mexico. Okay, I cannot pronounce that word. It's my Spanish isn't good to start with, and I cannot pronounce that volcano's name, but it's been very active. It's already erupted a little bit, and it's been very, very active. And there is a warning from the State Department for travelers from the U.S. to Mexico right now. If it's going to go do something this week, it is likely it will happen when the moon is in Leo. Now, there's nothing you can do about natural events like that. So if you're in the area, because I know we do have listeners in Mexico, please be careful. Please be safe. There's only so much we can do to prep for those kinds of events. Jupiter and the North Node are coming close together. I'm just going to pull up the chart for the 24th here. Let's see. When I look at the chart, it is very likely that it could be in South America, Central America, Mexico, south of where I am. Okay, so yes, Mexico is part of North America. People like to forget that. It's south of where I am. And that's where the action is kind of happening. It's southwest. And so that's a bit of a concern. The moon and Mars are conjunct on the 24th of May at 12:59 p.m. Actually, probably a little bit earlier than that, about 12:20 p.m. Pacific time. So that's like 3:20 p.m. Eastern. And things are kind of hotting up. And we have Venus sextile Uranus. This can be great on a personal level, by the way. That could be a really good day, especially if you have mid to later degree placements in Taurus or Cancer. There might be some little blessings that show up for you, little surprises, little happy gifts might show up. So that's not a bad thing. And we could see some interesting economic surprises happen as well. And it could be good things. I don't think there's going to be an agreement on the debt ceiling that day. Like I said, I see potential, a very slim potential for a save through negotiations. I don't think it's going to come through negotiations. So we may hear, Biden may pull the 14th Amendment. And I've been saying for quite a long time that we are in a constitutional crisis. Okay. We just had the 8th Saturn return for the U.S. Constitution. It finalized in January of 2023. We will continue. And it wasn't just the Saturn return, it's everything else going on. No, we are not in the Pluto return of the United States. I have a whole episode on that. You can scroll back through my old episodes to find it. That doesn't happen for quite some time because we didn't become a country till 1789. We did not become a country in 1776. We were still fighting to become one. Just because you say something, I can say, I'm an airplane, doesn't make me one, okay? So there's tensions throughout this week. And we end the weekend, or we have a long weekend in the USA, Memorial Day, and the moon will be in Libra then. Okay. And I think people are just going to want to take it easy or have a good time. It's not too bad then. There's a square to Venus, but it's not too bad. It's not too bad. I think people are going to probably just be a little careful with their spending that weekend because people are nervous about what's going to happen in the first week of June when it comes to the debt ceiling. I'd love to give you better news, and I promised you some hope, and we do have hope. We have the node and Jupiter conjunct. The North Node. Yes, it is an expansion of destiny, you could say. Destiny. Little Mel Brooks. It's an expansion of it's an economic expansion in some ways. Jupiter is not Santa Claus, but there's a saving grace in this. Okay, so even if something big happens, and if you could see me, I'm doing little air quotes with my fingers, big, if we did something big, then we would see it benefits us later down the line. So sometimes when we hit a crisis point, that's exactly, just like I said, sometimes we have the breakdown and it leads to the breakthrough. Okay. I gave in the Crunch report for patrons for the moon in Cancer. I talked about that a little bit. I'm reminding us we have to stop isolating ourselves out of fear and worry and doubt. And we have to start connecting to like-hearted people. We have to get to know people and build relationship. It's essential moving forward. We are the future, each one of us. You can't just put it all on the shoulders of Gen Z. I think that's rather irresponsible. They're very young, and we shouldn't be sitting back there going, well, I'll donate some money. Yeah, money's important and we should donate to causes, but we also should be surrounding these young ones so they can move forward and take some hits for them. Because they don't need to be beat up and bruised as teenagers and early 20-somethings, fighting for the fate of the planet without some protection. And that's if you're older, that's your job too. Okay. What won't get us through the next week is whining about historic times. We've all lived through historic times. Your grandparents lived through historic times. Your great-grandparents lived through historic times. We do not live in more historic times than our ancestors did. And as difficult as times are today, there was a very brief window in time where things were economically better for most people, and that was kind of like the 50s through the 60s. I didn't get to see that, but even that is a bit of a fantastical thing. There were still places that didn't have electricity in 1950. It came in a little bit later. So you really had a 10, 15-year window where things were a little more cushy. Okay. And they quickly began to erode it. So the media likes to spin things to disempower you. You were born for these times. You are the future. We are the solution seekers. We are the makers of change. And we need to network and we need to join together. And you can't say, well, I don't like people. I'm not social. You're freaking human. Your DNA is designed of covalent bonds. Okay, so stop hanging out with toxic whiners and start meeting with some people who are out to make a difference. Okay. People will be urging you to vote in the 2024 elections. I am among them. But that is the least of what we can do. Okay. I know in red states it's difficult. I know they've been gerrymandering. I get that. And some of that will make it much more difficult. If you have any privilege at all, lend it to the cause. Okay. But we can still plan forward. I like to plan for worst case scenarios. And if they don't happen, I'm over-prepared, underwhelmed. Okay. And that's what I suggest people do. Inflation is going to continue. It's not going to slow down. And if the Fed raises rates again, is not going to help any more than the last rounds have, because the problem hasn't been consumer spending. It has been corporate greed. And it is causing inflation on everything. It's put stress on my astrologers. It's put stress on me. I work really, really hard to keep prices in a range people can access, given the services they're receiving. This isn't when you read with us, it's not what you get from most people. It's extremely accurate. It's extremely useful. You're gifted an immense amount of information. And, I want to make sure my astrologers can, take care of themselves. So we're going to have to raise the rates because I have a new payment system where it allows you, it's called Zezel, and it allows you to make 6 split payments interest-free. But it has a much higher percentage that it takes out of the sale. And so when I give a discount, I don't take that out of the astrologer's share. I take it out of my share. And, it still benefits me in a lot of ways. But when I give a 50% off discount, they're the ones they get their half. We do a profit share. They get their half. So, so in order to keep on giving discounts, the juicy discounts to patrons, which aren't always 50% off, it depends. In order to do that, I'm going to have to raise prices. And I've made those announcements to the patrons and to lists. And it's just, something we got to do. I'm not going to raise the price on year ahead readings. Those open up in June. I'm going to keep those where they're at. And some of the consultation readings I'm going to have to raise because, again, it depends on the amounts. Okay, depends on the amounts. Some of them are going to have to rise. So sorry, guys. But I will still give juicy discounts to patrons and to people on my email list. You'll also get discounts. They're never as good as the patron discount. But you want to remember to use the right discount. Because my administration is me, myself, and I, guys. So how are you the hope? And I bring up the economic stuff because, you know, we all have to make decisions. That's what this square is all about. That's what this T-square is all about. It's forcing us to innovate. It's forcing us to make decisions. And some of them are uncomfortable. And I think you could hear from the tone of my voice. It's not the most comfortable decision for me. But trying to add as many helpful things as I can, including, you know, even payment plans on the website. You know, that's all kinds of things. People are going to have to make decisions they're not comfortable with. Doesn't mean you have to make bad decisions. And these decisions have to be centered around making sure your oxygen mask is on and on securely. Okay. So those of us who were raised to be really nice or, you know, be over accommodating, we may be very uncomfortable right now. Just saying. So there's that. The rocky days of this week are the 24th through the 26th. And then the 27th through the 27th, well, let me look. The 27th, we've got the moon moving into Virgo. And about 8 a.m., 8-ish a.m. Let me take a look. It's going to be an opposition. No. Oh, that was my mistake. A.m., not P.m., Laurie. Here we go. I have had more issues with software these days. Sliding to AM. Okay, it stayed. All right. Yeah. So at about 8:40 p.m. or sorry, 8:40 a.m. Pacific on the 27th, we can talk right. The moon will be in opposition to Saturn on May 27th. I don't think that's necessarily too ugly of a transit. It is going to be kind of interesting because the moon will also be making a trine to Jupiter that day. And that day is the day Jupiter and the node are conjunct. So it's going to be interesting. I think we could see seismic activity. I think we could see volcanic activity, you know, between the 24th and the 27th. But we could also see some amazing saves. We could see humans doing what humans really do best, which is being of service to one another, helping each other out. There could be other kinds of natural events around the world. And there could be, you know, weather events and things like that, you know, but people rise to the occasion. We tend to focus on the negative. We tend to focus on the ugliness. We tend to focus on the things that scare us. I mean, that's why we like ghost stories, right? Tell me a story that goes bump in the night. And yet there's so much beauty to put our focus to, even in devastating times, even when things are hard. There's beautiful things to look at. And that's where we want to put our focus. We want to look at the best of us. We want to see people, everyday people, doing extraordinary things. And we need to be doing those extraordinary things. And I'm not saying you need to run into a burning building or doing anything like that, but you can make sure somebody's okay. You can, if you witness something going on, you could make a call to try to help out. You could befriend someone. You could, you know, if you see something, do something about it. Don't just stand there and gawk. You know, I'm not saying put yourself in harm's way either. But it can be extraordinary to make sure somebody who is houseless has water or some money for food. And you'd be like, but what if they spend it on drugs? What if they do? What if they do? What if they do? What if they don't go to Mickey D's? Carry water with you to give out. It's okay to hand somebody some water. Dehydration does bad things to our brains. So there's things we can do, and we can be the hope we want to see in the world as much as we can be the change. You have to change within before you can change anything without. We are all going to have big feelings and big emotions over the next 6-7 weeks. We're tired, and people are cranky, and they're sensitive, and we're watching things continue. We're watching people do really dumb things with our rights and with our economy and with our livelihoods. It's easy to be frustrated, and it's easy to want to give up, but you weren't made to give up. You were made to be the future. And so one of the most powerful moments I know of is when we can sit quietly after a good cry, and in that silence, after you've blown your nose, that silence, when it's really quiet, and it's quiet inside of you, the storm has blown through, you've cried, you've raged, you've screamed, you've pounded the ground, you've hiccuped and sobbed, and when you're done and you've blown your nose, and maybe a tear or two, really hot, big tears, they're leaking out of the eyeballs, unbidden, but you're quieter. That's a sacred space, because that's the space where the ideas come. That's where the solutions are. So if you find yourself really cranky this week, you are not alone. We are all tired. It has been a long time. But we need to take this frustration and not allow it to be apathy or feel powerless, but rather feel the frustration, let the release happen, and listen for the solutions. You want to connect with people. You want to get organized. You want to form resistance. Okay? And resistance, not just walking in the street and taking to the streets, not performative, but like quiet resistance. Because I can tell you there's women who are going to need that help. There are people in the LGBTQIA community that need that help. There are people in the BIPOC community that need that help. And sometimes quiet is stronger. Okay? The tension is building because Pluto re-enters Capricorn June 11th. And it's going to be a crazy time in June. And it's still just more pressure building till July when the nodes change. And they change square Pluto. And it's going to be a very disruptive summer. And I'll talk more about what Venus retrograde in Leo might mean. That's not necessarily the worst of it. There's other stuff happening. But I was going to keep it light. I guess I didn't, huh? I'm sorry. Housing market isn't going to be great this year. Commercial real estate has to tank first. The banks are going to tighten up lending. And the debt ceiling, it's going to probably be challenged and what have you. We're living in interesting times. But we were born for them. Okay? So it's a wacky month. It's a wacky end to the month. And we're going to start June off with a bang. But yeah, there's some very, very interesting astrology this week. And I'll talk a little bit more about that before I get into the astrology Q&A, because I kind of want to talk about weather and all sorts of stuff. Don't give up hope. Please. Okay. Don't give up hope. It'll be interesting to see what happens around the world. We haven't heard anything about the power plant in Ukraine. One of the things that I've found lately is because the media doesn't do an adequate job of reporting on anything in a timely manner, or people don't report incidences. I'll predict something, and then like 6 months to 8 months down the line, there'll be a news story saying, "Oh yeah, back in so and so month, this happened. We didn't report it till now." So we'll see what happens. You got to think on one hand about your security, but part of your security depends on other people. None of us are islands. We need to form close groups of people. Okay. Tight networks. And you can say, I don't have any friends. Well, you can make friends. Okay. And we make friends not by looking for what we need or want, but what we can give. A good friend of mine many years ago, when I started networking for my business at the time, and I hadn't networked in a long time, and I'd kind of forgotten what it was like to be social. And I was like, hey, you got any advice? And they said, yeah, don't worry about being interesting. Be interested. And you do that and you'll rock it. And I was like, oh, that's great advice. And it is. Ask somebody about themselves. When they tell you about something they're interested in, say, tell me more. And mean it. Be genuine. If you're a patron, get into the Discord. Let's have some conversations. Yeah, you're there to learn about astrology, but astrology is reflective of life, my friends. Every word I'm speaking, if you knew astrology, you'd know the transits I was talking about without me having to say them. And that is the skill you can learn when you actually study astrology. You can hear the astrology in somebody's voice and the words they say, in the events, in the photos they take, in the songs they sing, or the music they listen to, or how they dance. You can see it, you can hear it, you can know the astrology without somebody saying, oh, well, I have Venus square Mars in my chart, right? Okay. Let's do some patron shoutouts and talk about some other good stuff. And then we'll talk a little bit more about the end of May and Memorial Day. And it's actually a good weekend. All right, pick up another towel and fold it. Did you get a good parking spot? Did you? Or are you still driving? I won't distract you. Keep your hands on 10 and 2. Oh, I hope your coffee was the perfect temperature for sipping this morning. I hope you are having a decent day. And if you've shed a little tear, that's okay. Feelings are okay, my friends. So let's see. I'll talk a little bit more about what's going on in Patreon. We've got our video live stream horoscopes. Sorry about the slides this time, guys. The slides wouldn't load. It was just nuts. But anyway, I got the most important slides embedded in the post up on Patreon. So you could see, kind of what to expect this week based on the transits. And I now know how to put chapters in my YouTube videos. That's exciting. We are going to meet every Sunday at 3:30 for live streaming. I'll get some reminder email. Somebody asked for a reminder email about an hour before. And I was like, but I'm running to catch up. And then I realized as I was making that excuse, I was like, wait, I can schedule a post. Duh. So I'll do some scheduled reminders. And if you're in Planet of the Month, the video will be up tomorrow. I'll finish the audio recordings of that book as well, the Living by Luna workbook. Or not workbook, but just book. There's so much to do, so little time. Let's see what else is going on in Patreon world. Oh, we got Coffee with Laurie on Sunday, May 28th. We've got Coffee with Laurie, Sunday, May 28th. That'll happen at 12:30, noon 30. So on Sunday the 28th, we meet in the Discord, which is super fun. All right, let's announce our newest patrons. Thank you for sponsoring the podcast, patrons. We've got Shireen, Mia, Jax, 532, Amy, Morgan, Joshua, Lizzie, Caitlin, Susan, Hazel, James, Jerica, Juti, Sarah, Sam, Electra, Susan B, Nikki, Simone, Andrea, Radine, Sherry, Polly, Reba, Kyle, Danny, Kendall, Shannon, Tosha, Mugwort, and Moon podcast. Thank you for putting up with me and my really wild and weird transits I've been living through. I tell you, I am looking so forward to next week. Remember, without patrons, there's no podcast. So thank you. Thank you for supporting the Awake Space Astrology Podcast. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about Memorial Day weekend and what you can look forward to that, because you really do get to look forward to something, guys, I promise. It's just kind of the middle part of this week is just like, what the hell? But the weekend is a lot better, and I think we're all just going to be looking for a little bit of R&R, okay? So we'll talk about that coming up next, and then we'll do astrology Q&A, where we talk about astrology and I answer your questions. Those are patron questions. All right. Alrighty, so we have to look at Memorial Day. We're looking at Memorial Day weekend. Most of the weekend, the moon is in Virgo. Like I said, it's pretty chill. There might be some natural events. I don't think those are happening in California, but let me take a quick look. Yeah, I don't really think so. I think it's not in Southern California anyway. Northern California off the coast might see a little bit of action again. Northeast, yeah, maybe more like Asia Pacific region. We're looking May 29th. Oops. Helps if we hit the right button, Laurie. Yeah, so the moon moves into Libra on Monday, May 29th. At around 8:45 a.m. And that's just going to be relatively pleasant. I think it's going to be a pretty chill, relatively chill time, because again, we have the stress from Mars in Leo towards the, planets in Taurus. So Mars will be starting to form a square with Mercury. So we'll see some bad traffic, but what's new on Memorial Day, right? Memorial Day itself. So in general, though, if you just want to have a cozy, take it easy, get your ducks in a row kind of time over the weekend, that's great. If you're trying to go on that traditional family vacation that you always go to, it might be a little more than you want to deal with, because people are going to continue to be reactive with Mars in Leo. So you got to be careful while you're driving. And And people always wonder what I mean by careful while you're driving. I mean exactly what I said. Watch out for other drivers, watch out for road rage, from yourself or anybody else. Just keep your eye open, because people who aren't conscious aren't thinking and they're reacting. So you want to watch out for that. We can all be reactive. I think there's going to be a lot of tension as people are waiting for the debt ceiling. So I think there's going to be a lot of talk around that. And, I think the 31st, which I believe is a Tuesday, it's just going to be a really tense day. I think we're going to see some legal challenges. I think, people are going to be on edge. So I'd use the Memorial Day weekend as a time to kind of do some self-care, do some of the honey-do list around the house. Take care of yourself and your family. Get in some nurturing time, or organize, again, organize. I don't mean necessarily politically organizing, but you could do that. But just, tidying up around the house. Just getting ready for the full moon in June. Speaking of, we got the full moon workshop happening on Sunday the 28th, and that's where I do a channeled meditation. Everybody gets a recording. I do the Q&As off the recording, so we do the lecture part and then we do the meditation. You get the 2 recorded files. I don't take questions on the recording because, I want people to feel safe. I think that's really important. We were talking about that in the natal chart class. I gave the introduction class this last Saturday, and it was just really important to make sure people knew this isn't like the classroom environment you grew up in. This is a place to really learn and grow, and it's okay to make a mistake. You don't have to try to impress me. You're here to learn. I'm here to teach. And I'm not going to favor right answers over the willing attitude of the learner. If you're a willing student, I'm a willing teacher. That's just, I love that. I love people who are eager to learn and ready to expand their knowledge. And so that's kind of, the attitude we kind of have to have right now. I think instead of feeling like we have to know what we're doing, we have to understand we really are walking into new territory, all of us, and we're learning as we go. And I think if we have a do or die attitude, that's just so much more stress than we need. I think if we all just gave each other a little bit of a break and said, we haven't been here before. We're learning as we go. And not expect, everybody's ready to point the finger. Whose fault is it? What if it's that fault is so old there's no point to pointing fingers? But what if we could create solutions together? I always like to remind everybody of that old TikTok sound where, oh no, the table is broken. And when the dog crashed over the couch and smashed the table, knowing that the dog smashed the table didn't fix it. We know what caused all of this, economically, climate change. We've been talking about this for decades. It's tiring to hear the same old arguments. Each generation picks up the torch and carries the argument forward. We know, but knowing the cause doesn't always find the cure. Unless you've been poisoned, then you need the antidote. But right now, we need to come up with solutions and innovate. We need to innovate by connecting with one another. We need to brainstorm. We need to collaborate. And not everybody, we need to execute as well. We need to get shit done, and stat. So, but for this weekend, let it be a quiet one. Let it be a time to just connect, to ground, to tune in. And, again, I do think we will see some interesting events happen, natural events around the globe. It could be seismic, it could be weather, it could be volcanic, any number of days throughout this week through the weekend. It's getting interesting, folks. It is. Let's see. I'm trying to. This week is not as volatile as last week was. Last week there was just like, I don't know. I'm still recovering. By Friday, I felt like I'd been beat up on the inside. It was just a lot of energy. I don't know how you guys are feeling. Do we need to get more stuff out of the dryer? Do we? Okay. You ready to put the dishes away? I'll help you do that. Open the cupboard. I've got it. Okay. I'm just looking. We're really, other than the T-square that we're kind of dealing with over the next few days, and then the Jupiter node conjunction, which is kind of nice. There's not a lot more happening, like we need any more happening. It's Gemini season. We could celebrate that. June 3rd, and I'll do next week's episode all about that, is the full moon in Sagittarius, and that promises to be some interesting times. These early month full moons have packed a wallop, guys. So this weekend we want to relax. Sometimes you just have to have a moment of quiet. And that's what I see. I see a moment of quiet, kind of like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, kind of wild. I'm just looking at the 3rd. Yeah. It's a little wild. That full moon is square Saturn. It happens at night, but it'll be a beautiful moon that night. That's the upside. Now, this one is not at 1 degree like all the other ones have been. This one is at 13 degrees. And I think it's going to have to do with foreign relations. I think it's going to have to do with expanding our minds and creating new visions. Mars and Jupiter are in a separating square, but Mercury and Uranus are conjunct. And so there could be some interesting transportation things happening that night. Or through that day. It's just interesting. Okay. So since this full moon is mid-degree, we're actually dealing with midpoint of a process. It's not a beginning process. It's revealing a midpoint in a process. So this could be something to do with foreign relations. This could be doing with trade agreements. This could be all manner of things. And that's June 3rd. So it's an ongoing situation. It's not new. So this is not surprise, other than Mercury is conjunct Uranus. It's mixed messages, universe. But we'll do a whole episode on that. I wish I had better news for you guys. We have some quiet time this week. It's kind of a roller coaster. Okay, so put your crash helmets on, buckle up. I'm tired too. Okay, I'm tired too. But there's opportunity in chaos. There's opportunity in the maelstrom. There's opportunity in crisis. And if you can keep your focus even a little bit, if you can listen in that quiet after the breakdown for the solutions in the breakthrough, magic happens. And I know that to be true. It's been the way in my life. So many times I thought, well, that's it. That's over. There's nowhere else to go. My back's against a wall. I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. I can't think of one more thing, one more solution. I can't. I'm tired. I cannot get up out of bed. I cannot take one more step. I cannot tell you the amount of times in my life I felt that way. That's why I can tell you with certainty, it's not a very useful space. It's a natural thing to do, but it's not a very useful space. And when I've chosen to listen, and obviously I have done many times, I took one more step, one more breath. Even as a little kid, when nothing looked like it was ever going to be good, I woke up every morning saying, it's got to be better than this. It's got to be better than this. When I'm a grown-up, it's got to be better than this. And you know what? As even in a world that's going through a shitstorm, it's still better than it was back then. In fact, hell, I would have paid for the problems I've got today. Perspective is everything, my friends. Don't buy into the media hype that this generation is facing the worst of this and this generation is facing the worst of this. They're doing it to sow division. It isn't that, it is a complete lie. It is just merely a way to keep you disempowered. Okay? So, if they want us to zig, we need to zag. We've got to innovate. And we can't do that from thinking about the problems. And that's why they keep you absorbed in them. Deep breaths, understand your capabilities, and we're in it together. All right, let's do some astrology Q&A. All right, let's do some astrology Q&A. Wow, so many new questions. Thank you, patrons. Keep asking me. I love them. So Dulce asks, if hypothetical planet 9 were to be discovered, what effect would it have on astrology? It is a celestial body, but we haven't known about it for very long. Would it even change anything? I don't think it really changes a whole lot. What I would hope people didn't do is what they did with the other outer planets, where they, especially Pluto, where they really over-assigned. They also did it with some asteroids as well, where if it got named after a Greek or Roman myth, they would assign that mythos's meaning to the interpretation. And I think that's a really dumb thing to do. I think we have to observe it. I think, everybody wants to claim astrology as a science, but if they're not willing to sit down and make observations and collect data, and they want to assert information without observation, then I think it doesn't work. I think, we've got a couple of planets that have dual, rulership of, like Mercury. It rules both Gemini and Virgo. Venus rules both Taurus and Libra. I think there's room for other celestial bodies that we could have assigned. I had an astrophysicist kind of come at astrology by, even though they're a medium, so it wasn't like it was woo-woo that was the issue, but they were like, so tell me, since you like Pluto so much, do you, what about all the other trans-Neptunian bodies? And I'm like, it could just be the lens through which we see the trans-Neptunian bodies. Maybe that's the filter. We can't know for sure. Why are you asking us for facts when we're still collecting data? We've never seen a full orbit of Pluto in human consciousness. It was not in our consciousness until 1930. So the same would go for whatever celestial body gets discovered. You can't really apply these celestial bodies to past events because they weren't in our consciousness. So there you go. That's a pretty cool question. Thank you for asking it. Let's see. All right, I'm going to slide forward I wish there was a faster way to slide through these questions. Let's see. Oh, let's see. Yeah. Okay. I don't want to delete them. Maybe I need to make a new form and I'll just collect a whole bunch of them. Because, let's see. Oh, I already did that. I answered that. There we go. Okay, I answered that one. Goodness sakes. I'll have to start singing in a minute. I wish I could tell you about all the cool stuff that's coming up. Let me talk. I'll rattle while I look for more questions to answer. But I have a bunch of podcasts that I've been on. In fact, I'm recording one this afternoon with a very cool person, and I have another one I'm recording with tomorrow on Tuesday. I answered this one, so that one got answered. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, I have a question. So Maverick. Hi, Maverick. What does it mean when Neptune is transiting one of your big six? I'm not a fan of the big three, big six stuff. I'm not going to lie, and I'm not going at you. First of all, we have the ascendant, and then we have personal placements. That's what it is. That's the nomenclature. So it would depend. A Neptune transit is going to have a different flavor depending on what placement it's transiting. And Neptune takes 14 years to transit a sign. Okay. 14 years to transit a sign. So when Neptune is transiting a personal placement, so whether it's the ascendant, the sun, the moon, Mercury, Mars, Venus, those guys, it can be really interesting. You might have some interesting, it depends on where it's transiting and what kind of aspect it's making. So a transit can be a conjunction, but it can be a sextile, it could be a square, it could be an opposition, it could be a trine, and each one of those is going to have a different quality. Man, when Neptune was opposite my sun and Mercury, that was in the 90s. Man, it was so weird. And it takes a while. It takes a couple of years, right, to finish it. You have the approach, and then it's exact, and then it has the separation. And it was like my identity was dissolved. Like I already had a tough time with it to start with, because I was born with Neptune in the first house, trying my sun and Mercury, and it was like, who am I? Who do you want me to be? And so whatever identity I had formed was just absolutely dissolving while I had Pluto running through the first house. It was kind of a double whammy. It was something else. And then Neptune conjuncted Mars, and it was just a really weird time. I think saying it's just really weird could be a very Neptunian transit type of statement. So it just honestly really just depends on what the transit is. If you want to ask a follow-up to this so I can get more specific with you, that would be fine. But each one of those transits, the one thing I really remember from the opposition to my sun and Mercury, because they're Cazimi, I felt like I was talking underwater. Like it didn't matter what I said. People just could not hear what I was saying. It was like I'm telling you this right now, and you're hearing me say raspberry tarts, it was so bizarre. That's why when I sit in gratitude for you guys, when I'm like, oh, wow, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for hearing what I have to say. It's because I lived through that transit. Like Pluto opposite Sun and Mercury has nothing on that Neptune. It's just intense. It's like, girl, you got to change how you do things, says Pluto. Whereas Neptune was like, and people would be like, yeah, the rain in Spain stays mainly on the plain. You'd be like, what I'm saying is, I need help. I would like some help, please. You're very strong and you can do everything on your own. Okay. No, that is not what I was saying. Yes, I know that's what you were saying. You know, it was just nuts. And it was like everywhere. It wasn't just like one space. Like it was interesting. My intuition developed a lot at that time, and my cognitive ability of it versus my natural abilities. So getting, I found like Reiki training and all kinds of things in the 90s because of those transits. So it could be a real spiritual experience. I had, my first real, other than as a very small child, I had a meditative experience that was pretty wild, where I just really knew I was connected to the all that is. It's one of the reasons I'll argue to the day as long we don't need psychedelics. It can happen in meditative states, and it certainly can happen during a transit. What I will say is, if you have Neptune transiting your Mercury in any way, shape, or form, any aspect, you really don't need psychedelics. You really don't. And in fact, they could be a little over the top for you at that point. But yeah, not saying that you're using psychedelics, Maverick, but I was just speaking in general. All right. Let's see what's up next. What have we got? Okay, I'm going to answer that question later. Okay, let's see. Oh, Maverick. You know what? I should have known Maverick asked most of these questions. Maverick is an avaricious learner, and I love teaching. So... Heather, I love you. Since we're in such intense and heavy times right now, to help lighten the load, can you tell us a funny astrology story? It can even be a Uranus joke. I love Uranus jokes. A funny astrology story. Okay, it's a weird story. It's not necessarily funny, haha. Although funny, haha. Good friend of mine who's an astrologer, and he and I've helped him co-teach. He was getting started, and so I'd go as training wheels for him. I love supporting people on their journeys, and his Uranus is on my moon in our synastry, and so we often make jokes about that. Like, Uranus is on my moon, and people will look at us. It's really funny. But anyway, naughty. True story. In 2014, I was at a business networking group, and as a business consultant, okay, because I develop revenue streams for people, and astrology was something I did very much on the QT, because I did not want to lose credibility, and it was not a space or a place that was accepting of anything woo. And so it was one of those lunch meetings. And so we were doing our little bit of socializing before sitting down. And this woman approached me. She was a new member. And she walked up and she looked at me. I was in a black business suit. And she said, "So, you're an astrologer." And I'm like, "And you are psychic? We're taking this to a corner." And she ended up being the Washington State Astrological Association president. And that was one of the weirdest things that's ever happened. So that was kind of funny. I don't have any funny stories on me, but I'm going to hold that card. I've been trying to think of lighter things to say. We are in heavy times. And I'm feeling the weight as much as everybody. So I'll try to think of something funny. But that was a good one, Heather. Thank you. And I hope your move's going good. Thank you. Let's see. Let's get a learning question. Okay, that's looking for another one. Some of these are really good questions, but they're kind of complicated, so I need to sit with them for a little bit. Answered that one. Let's see. Oh, this is a great question. This is from Lisette. How does the ascendant and midheaven differ in how you are seen, and how do they blend, or if they do? Sometimes the midheaven and the ascendant can blend a little bit. A lot of times, though, they don't, because they're kind of a square. But not every ascendant and midheaven are square. They can be sextile. They can be sextile. They're usually not trine, but they can be sextiled, which is interesting when that happens. A little more rare than the square, more often the square, and this is how I like to describe the ascendant. So the ascendant is your physicality, okay? It's your physical body, it's your physical appearance, and it's how you kind of assert your personality in the world when you don't know anybody. It's a first impression phase. And so it's like whether you're walking, I like to say it's how you walk through a door or into a room. Okay. And so it's how you walk into the grocery store. It's how you walk into a concert. It's how you walk into a conference room. And it will, that and other factors, but it still pretty much is your baseline for walking into somewhere. And so there are people who will just walk in and be like, see me, feel me, touch me, hear me. Hey, how you, give me high fives. And there's other people like myself who will walk in very quietly. I will walk in, you really see my Scorpio rising if I don't know people, or don't know people well, or I'm in a new environment. I'm very cautious. I'm very quiet. I walk in, I kind of step over to the side, I survey things, right? Whereas if I'm comfortable and confident where I'm at, and I'm in my power, which isn't about dominance and control, it's just I'm certain, I have the confidence of where I'm at, you'll see that differently, and that's my midheaven. So it's not like my ascendant isn't confident, it's cautious. So it's a little more protective. I don't know where I'm at. I don't know these people. I'm going to survey the situation. And once I feel confident and I take a bold step forward, then you see my midheaven. Okay. So the midheaven is how people see us in our passion or in our power, in our confidence. It's where we wield authority. It's how we wield authority, or it's how we deal with authority figures. Okay. So it's a reputation, it's our calling, it's how we are in our passion. And so that's the 10th house. So that there is a difference, right? They don't often blend. They can sometimes be at odds together, because let's put it this way. The 10th house, you don't really see that in yourself. Other people see it. It's like switching gears. So like the ascendant is how we protect ourselves. It's how we assert ourselves, and assertion can be protection. And so think of it, you have different layers of self. We are not always the same person. We always have different roles we play, so, and some people are a lot more consistent. It depends on what else is going on in the chart too, right? Some people are always bold walking into places, right? I hope this answers your question. I feel like I'm rambling a little bit, but the ascendant shows how we just walk into the room. The 10th house shows how people recognize us in our power, or what our reputation is, how it's seeing us more in authoritative view, or what we're known for. It's our reputation. You can't really have a reputation as a stranger, right? So you can if people have gossiped ahead of time, but that'll show in the chart too, you know. So there's usually an at odds with the square between the rising and the 10th house, because to be really comfortable in your 10th house, unless you have personal planets there, you usually don't see that in you. So like for me, I have Leo midhaven and I have a Scorpio rising. I'm a little shy by nature, and I'm very socially cautious. Not a lack of confidence, but I just like to make sure I like where I'm at and I like the vibe. And people will see me as super, super confident, and they always have. And people would do what I said, even as a kid. I mean, grown-ups would ask me my advice. I was like 5, and they'd be listening to me as I lectured them. I'd be like, do you know, that's really weird. I feel really not confident in you. You're listening to me. I couldn't see why. Like, why would people listen? And it took me a long time. Now that I'm older and I have experience under my belt, and I'm not talking about from when I was 5, but even 20 years ago, I'd be like, why the hell are people listening and following me? I don't know what the hell I'm doing. It wasn't imposter syndrome. I'd just be like, I literally don't know what I'm doing. Why are they asking me? Now it's like, no, I know. So they see the confidence, but I'm still going to be quieter walking into, a place I'm not familiar with, just because I like a little bit more certainty. I don't like surprises. And so until I feel certain, you're not going to see that confidence. So there's a push me, pull you. Also, the push me, pull you. I don't like being on camera, right? That's the Scorpio rising. I don't like being on camera. But to meet my objectives and ambitions to teach a whole lot of people about astrology, guess what I got to do? I got to do the TikTokies and the YouTubes and the live streaming. And I'm not gonna lie, it's not my favorite thing. I'd rather do this audio 10 times more. So we'll talk about that in natal chart foundations, and also we'll go through it a little bit more in the intermediate course as well. But yeah, that was a really good question. So most often there's a push me, pull you between your understanding of self as well as that first house, right? That's how you conceive yourself. And then you have what the world sees. Really great book that has nothing to do with astrology, but everything with how the world sees you. In fact, that's the name of the book, How the World Sees You by Sally Hogshead. It's a great book. Sally Hogshead is a Hall of Fame speaker, and she's an advertising maven. She's also a really nice lady. I've communicated with her. She's really cool. She wrote this book about 10 years ago. And it really helps you see what other people value in you. And I was excited the first time I came across the book, because as an astrologer, I was like, oh my God, she just described the 10th house without using astrology. She is amazing. So that's a fun one to look at. That'll help describe that energy, and then just keep thinking 10th house while you're looking at it. All right, I think I've got time for one more. Let's see. Maybe not. Oh, wait. Can you explain Pluto and Sagittarius as the weight of a microgeneration's contribution to the species planet as a whole? I'm curious about the energy Gen Z carries, and would also, if time allows, love to hear about millennials and Gen X's Pluto energy. Wow, I think I'll cover this one again next week, because I could actually do a whole episode. I should do a poll. If you guys want me to do a whole episode about the kind of the generational aspect of Pluto, because it's really not a generational planet. It's a transpersonal planet, and I could do a whole episode. I plan on writing a book about Pluto. Pluto, you have to look at the time it was active. So Pluto in Sagittarius was the mid 90s through the mid 2000s, right? Until 2008. And there was a lot of political change happening. There was globalization happening, interesting enough. Not internationalism, but true globalization, which kind of destabilized us in the long run. And as far as like Gen Z, the weight of their contribution, I think it is unfair to place that on their shoulders. It's not one generation's job to make things better. It's kind of a collective experience. But I think they're going to push really hard to make change. They're very idealistic. But you have to remember, Sagittarius can bite off more than it can chew, and it also gives up when it's frustrated sometimes because it forgets how long the journey is. And one of the things I think we need people to remember is we need people with staying power. So that's what I can answer about Pluto and Sagittarius. But I think it would be good to go through the different Pluto groups and talk about how that energy can play out and what it means for us. So maybe we'll do a special episode about that. Maybe I'll do it just for patrons. Lisette, maybe I'll do that for patrons. Okay, I'm going to look at one more astrology question. Speaking of teaching astrology, guys, I made flashcards for natal chart foundations, and these have been so fun to make. And everybody's kind of handling them in a different way, which is super fun. I've been enjoying that. So some people are putting them into like trading card folders, and I'm like, I am honored. Other people are gluing them together, but these are super fun and meant to be teaching tools. The set got pretty big. It's pretty simple. I didn't make it fancy or anything, mostly because I was thinking of people printing them out. So I think that's it. I think that's all the questions we'll answer today. I'll bring some good questions in next week. I look forward to featuring questions, and again, I'll do a patron only Pluto episode. I'll write that down so I don't forget. Speaking of Sag influence, because Sag can be like, hey, yeah, I'll do that, and then gets busy and forgets. It's not intentional, and it's not breaking promises. It's literally just busy brain. But anyway, I really appreciate everybody, and I want to thank you for listening to the podcast. Again, go listen to Christine's podcast, Out of the Box with Christine. She is amazing. She'll inspire you. She's my type of person. I just really enjoyed being on their podcast, and I hope you go listen to them. I will talk to you next week. Have a really good long weekend. Next episode drops Monday the 29th on my mommy's birthday. And we'll talk about that full moon June 3rd.